Hello, one and all, and welcome back to the Hidden Realms YouTube channel. I am your host, Joshua MacGregor, and we are here to talk a little bit about the Mockeries and the Reserve Lists series of Race to the Battle of the Bands. Thank you so much for being here. So first of all, this is Roll Insight. Let's do our little gimmick. I've got a D20 here, and I'm going to roll an insight check for all of you out there to see how much I'm going to give you. That's a 12, which is far better than the average of this show, which is usually in the very low single digits. Guys, it has been a hot sec since I have done one of these. It's about 2 weeks this time instead of 1 week. And the other episodes went dark as well for 1 week. And that is because of an editing scheduling issue. It's nothing to do with the actual games themselves. Those have been going very well and continue on into the future of the series. However, the editing process just took a little bit of a bump for a week, but not to worry. Everything will be coming per the usual. So tomorrow there will be the Mockeries episode 8, and the day after there will be the Reserve List episode 8, which continues the stories of Astrofeld and Crushear. So let's talk about last week's episodes. Or the week before that, rather. Let's talk about episodes 7 of the Mockeries and the Reserve List, starting with the Mockeries. The Mockeries episode called The Gig at Astrofeld sees the Mockeries band make their way from having been very successful in Oddmore and Merle Stone. They go back through Oddmore, they are lauded as heroes, and they make their way to Astrofeld, where there is an enormous celestial event that is about to occur. I want to talk a little bit about what this episode contained and also some of the inspirations that went into this particular arc of the story. Because it had become clear to me at this point that the stories of the two disparate bands were going to start to, if not come immediately to a head, at least develop into the main major conflicts when they got to the respective cities the furthest from the capital that they are. And that meant that for the Mockeries, I wanted to set up all of the... I didn't want to have people just be subderm, like subconscious anymore. I wanted to put names to faces and kind of say, these are the factions. Now, we don't get to that point in the Gig at Astrofeld just yet, but that's what it is all leading into, is Astrofeld. Astrofeld is a crazy arc. We just finished shooting the rest of Astrofeld, and it gets crazy. So I'm going to have to, as an editor, I'm going to have to just make sure to be as clear as possible with the storytelling of it. Because there are things that I clarify outside of game with people and what have you. But what we see from the actual band is that they come into town, they sort of get a look around and see what's going on. They have a nice little moment with with Dylan, and then they go and they meet a blacksmith and they get all of their armor and stuff upgraded and weapons upgraded so that they can properly deal with werewolves, because they accurately surmise that there are going to be werewolves coming up as one of the major antagonists of the story. After Matt Shesha got Thesia to fight with Orlando and then told her, and there are more werewolves that you will have to hunt and fight if you wish to be the champion of Malar. So there is some revelation stuff. There's some stuff that's going to happen in the next few episodes for sure. But but yeah, just starting to talk a bit about this scythe that they're going to try to grab, uh, starting to introduce characters specific to this location, and yeah, this sort of expanding out of the story and setting up the main conflicts between these very powerful factions. Start to get some of that world building going. So that's the idea. Asterfeld is going to be a few episodes long. It's definitely going to be longer than either Oddmore or Asterfeld. Was, but there is a reason for that, and the story is going to simplify from that point. It's just setting everything up because again, I sort of saw that the Mockeries had Asterfeld, then Salt's Watch, then Sessenseal, and a little like and the area around Sessenseal, I'll say. Sessenseal being the main like big city where a lot of this stuff's going to go down. I realized I have to set all this stuff up. It's important that these shadows have names and faces put to them. So that was a lot of fun to start to introduce these factions and arcs and things. Let's talk a little bit about the reserve list episode 7. So here's what I will say is that the two different things are introducing world building elements. Some of it is at the same time, some of it is unique to those different things, and some of them are overall world things, but only one of them is dealing with it. The Mockeries sort of met with an investigator from the City Watch, who was sent on behalf of, of the royal family, and the reserve list get to be introduced to the Zero Task Force, which is another major player in Garandian politics and military operations. It is an international organization in terms of its recruitment process and its operating boundaries, but it is run by a Garandian, Edgar Galanis, who answers directly to the royal family of Garandia and a special council that are called for specific large-scale missions. So the great thing about this episode, the road to Crosshair, is I had plans for, and have plans for Harath and Goresh and the Men in the Iron Masks / the Aruhani, and what that whole storyline is going to be, and that will continue on to Menesil. But I had the same kind of thing, which is we have Crosshair and then Menesil. So introducing this character who is so important for the backstory of Gwen specifically, but also helps to showcase some of the other stuff that is going on in this world. It felt important to bring them in sooner rather than later. And that's one of my storytelling philosophies, is like, you could save things, but there are always going to be more things that you're going to be bringing in. And better, I think, to, at this stage of the story, to show your hand, to put faces to names, to bring these characters into the player's consciousness and the audience's consciousness, and then actually get to play with them rather than just kind of go like, oh yeah, there's someone, you know what I mean? Which is one of the main motivating factors for really getting into the main plot is I want to give them the opportunity to actually interact with and learn more about these people, and interact in a very interesting way. I in my home campaign, it wasn't actually, it was about a quarter of the way through the campaign that the main villain of the campaign first appeared, because there was a primary uh, they appeared as a secondary antagonist at first, but became the primary antagonist later because there was a primary antagonist at the beginning. Um, and the fact that that person came in first, like quite a lot earlier than if I had just done one villain at a time. Uh, that villain, her name was Neris. She came in very early on and started to be able um, to interact with the players, and they start to get used to what her deal is, um, and uh, you. Here's the thing. Here's the ultimate thing: is that you can only direct your players' attention so much, and the more experienced your players become, the less you are able to direct their attention. That's not to say. I'm going to say Race to the Battle of the Bands is uh, primarily based around or is primarily based around mysteries, and that's the founding premise. Astrovel goes a little ways off of that, but the Mockeries always went a little bit off of that. Uh, so yes, what was I saying? Um, they it's primarily a mystery. So when I say there's a mystery to solve, the players know that that's what I've prepared, rather than we're gonna find a boxing ring and be in a boxing ring this entire time. It's like, well, sure, you could do that, but we all came with the understanding that we're going to solve mysteries. That's not what I was saying before. When you're saying you direct people's attention, there is no way of knowing when you introduce a concept where people's attention is going to ultimately go, which characters people are going to latch on to, which characters they're going to hate, uh, who they want to interact with. I will say, for the Mockeries, the amount of hatred that they all had for Orlando Coin warmed my heart, and it was completely, well, I mean, he was meant to be sort of a villain of the week type villain, but the fact that they have that warms my heart and makes the world so much more rich, because ultimately, if your players care about something, whether it is that they love it or they hate it, uh, that is what makes the world engaging, both to watch and for your players. So I think it's far more interesting to bring these people forward so that your players can form their opinions on them. And if they're not interested in them, then they can be done away with. They can, take on a smaller role, and you can introduce and give more time to the people they are interested in. There's a character coming up in Crush here for the reserve list. Ooh, my background is just. Ooh. There. Sorry about that. Coming up in Crusher, who was not planned at all, whose name maybe you will be able to tell because I made it up on the spot, was not at all a planned character. But he ended up being people's favorite in the town. So that made me very happy indeed. And that's one of those times where you have to, like, as a DM, you have to be willing to go on your feet, to improvise on your feet, because sometimes really fantastic things are going to come out of it. And sometimes your players are going to say, hey, I want to go to this location. And you're like, I have not prepared anything for that location. Man, I have a lot of world building to do before they get to Meneseal. I think I have to flesh out a lot of stuff. But yes, let's talk about Edgar Galanis and his relationship with Gwen. This is something that we've only just started to look at, and we're a couple of days out from filming the end of the Crosshair arc, so I'm not going to say that anything goes a particular way. But Gwen, played by Alberta, who's fantastic, has a strained relationship, or a lacking relationship with her father. and there's more to learn about that and about what that is and means for her. Uh, but when we were talking through the character and we were talking about what makes her tick and uh, um, forgive me, we were talking about what makes the character tick and you know the motivations and sort of the directions that we thought that the character would go. Um, it felt to me important to make that character present sooner rather than later. Uh, and I tied them in a little bit um, to some of the more major stuff that's going on. Because spoilers for those episodes, it appears at first that Edgar Galanis is in cahoots with Harath and Goresh, and that's all I'm going to say. Is you got to find out more about that. We also have a very important thing to talk about, which I can't believe just slipped my mind for this long, is that Hugo joined us. Hugo, who has been role playing with me for many, many months. We started role playing with Neil back before COVID hit, who's a wonderful, wonderful role player, and brought Lydiana to the table, who so fits the group dynamic and so fits the aesthetic and style of the show. And who will continue to be a part of the events to come. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to personally get to know Lydiana better, but also for you guys to see Lydiana and her whole deal. So we are wonderfully blessed to have Hugo. He's a generous player. He makes the game better by being there, and he's slotted seamlessly into the group, which is not something to be taken for granted, actually. Introducing new people to an established group is a very hard thing sometimes. People's personality can clash with the tone that's been established, and not everybody automatically gets on well, but it worked out this time because Hugo's great and the people are great. That's actually all I wanted to say this time around. Shorter episode. Thank you so much for watching. Check in tomorrow for more stuff, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.